Hey guys. There's no Addy this week because I'm doing a video request from Tymkrs. He asked if I could make a video showing how to make something like cyber metal. So I'm gonna do a track today called Voltage, and we're gonna start with this old jazz record right here. And I got it on the turntable, and the turntable's feeding into a two-channel multi-band EQ, and then into a tube preamplifier. The RIAA curve is set on the EQ, and the tube amplifier is just preamplifying it up to line level so that I can record it with that tone port UX8. And I'm just finding the beginning of that drum break on the record. You'll hear it start here momentarily. I'm going to start the recording. Okay, GarageBand. Now we don't want the music, we just want a couple drum hits, so that part right there is what we're looking for. And I'll stop this as soon as the horns pick back up again. Drummer's pretty good. Alright, there's that. So we've got that. We can take the record off. There we go. Alright, let's cut out just the drum break section. We don't need any of the music. After that horn. Yeah. Do a cut here, delete the horn. And now I want to start pulling drums off of this. We're not going to leave these as they are, but we got to get the recording. You see the waveform? You can see the drum hits. And I'm lining the beginning of them right up to the cursor, snipping them off right where they start, and then dragging them down to the line below. And I don't need that one. I need some cymbal stuff. There was something. No. No. Hey. Yeah, I think that one right there. I think one more after this and we should be good. So basically what we're doing is snipping out these individual drums out of this. And we're going to use them to make our own drums, our own drum set. Okay, I think that's the last one I need. So we'll remove that stuff. And now I've got this setup with a guitar rig. That allows me to set up a rack of equipment, turn on noise reduction on this to, it's a good way of explaining it. Only noises above a certain level can get through it. The filter is changing the character of which frequencies are able to get through, and the limiter brings it up to the exact amplitude that I want. That's burned out now on disk in an AIF file, lossless. No compression. So now we're going to do this snare. Looks like the same guitar rig settings will work for that. So we got kick and snare. This one, same settings. So there's our tom. Here's a second snare. That sounds really good actually. So we'll just burn that out as is. Now this one has two drums in it. It's got the cymbal and sounds like maybe a snare in there. We want to isolate just the higher frequency stuff, so we'll use the filter. Yeah. This one will take a little bit of dialing in because we're getting rid of half of it, frequency-wise. Gotta find the right balance point of it. Because we took so much material away, we've got to use the limiter to bring it back up to the right volume. There's a little bit of weird background noise. We can get rid of that with the noise reduction. Gotta be careful not to set it too high or it starts to sound like static. Yep. Alright, so now we can make that one out. That'll be our hat open sound. And now we need to make a hat closing sound. So this isn't exactly that, but with a little bit of filtering and stuff, we can make it what we want. Yeah, hat closing has some lower frequency content in it, so we gotta bring down our roll-off points. See that little... That's what we're looking for. A closed sound. Even if you don't have the sounds that you need, you can make them really easily with a filter, a limiter, and a noise gate. Ah, that's a little too loud. We'll be tweaking these even further once we load them into the drum machine. But this is just a rough first pass, bringing the samples in to be the right drums. It pays to be careful when you first bring them in and get them in the right frequency ranges. You can do a lot more with them if you have a lot of space around them, so if they don't take up really wide band. Okay, so here's the drum machine, and I've pulled the samples into it. I've got the kick tom, snare 1, snare 2, and hats in here, and they're assigned to keys on the keyboard. So I can program all of the drums in MIDI now. There you go. That's really fun. Now I'm going to work on programming a drum loop here, and I'll speed this part up because, I mean, it takes trial and error to find something that works really well with what we're going for the song and with the character of the drums that we pulled off the record. I'm going to find a good pattern here. Being at 8x speed, it'll only take a moment. And I'm just going through and trying to find a groove. There, it's got a little bit of back and forth swing and action to it. We can play off of that. But these drums are really sort of basic. So here's the rest of the pattern. We'll be making some more patterns later for the break and stuff. Here I'm just adjusting the volume so the last one matches. Making the drum hits. Velocity of them match up with everything else. Here's the whole pattern. Yep. So, but that was really sort of weak and thin, so we're adding echo and reverb to bring all the drums into the same physical space so that they sound like they're part of a real kit. You can see the delay there, just sort of a fast echo. The limiter is sort of acting as a very sort of direct to the point compressor, getting them loud enough. So I'm going to burn that out as a drum loop. We do this so that we aren't using all the processing power of having battery running and guitar rig and all that sort of stuff. As we go, you'll see I'll keep baking things down to files. Okay, now we need to start on the bass drum. We're starting with just a MIDI single kick drum, but we're going to noise reduce it so that all the environmental stuff around the drum disappears. And we add a bunch of resonance to it so that the has that dome sort of bass drum sound instead of just a kick drum. And we're using the limiter to bring the volume up to exactly where we want it, no higher and no lower. And I'm just playing with the filter, setting it to bandpass. So we only want a very specific little narrow frequency range out of that thing. And that really helps bring in the bottom of the drum line. I do these things separately so that I can bring the bass drum in and out to increase the dynamic range when I want to. Now we're going to affect our drum loop as if it were like on a record and somebody were changing the roll-off points and stuff. Now I'm using automation, a little step sequencer to control the cutoff here on beats 1, 2, and 8 of a 16-beat sequence. And I'm also going to run it through some isotope vinyl plug-in, which makes it sound like it's on a record, very old record actually. So these things are, I'm taking that drum loop and I'm turning it into a really bad sample off of a record. So we took the drums off of a record, we brought them in, we rearranged them into a different pattern. We were putting them back onto a virtual record now, and then we'll sample off of that record when we pull that back in. So we're at like, you know, 3 or 4 stages deep into it to really get it ours completely. Okay, so that's burned out and I'll pull it back in. I'll give it a quick listen and maybe see how it sounds with everything else. Yeah, that'll do nicely. Use both of them together, which you can do. It's the same thing, one's affected, one's not. As soon as I turn these off, there we go. Okay, let's bring in the kick. So we can play back and forth between our different drum parts. But for right now, I'm going to do the bass line, and I'm going to use my Game Boy to do that. This is modified with a line level output, and it's running LSDJ software, which is a little sequencer program. And we're doing this song in E minor, so I'm going to set that to an E. We're going to make a little instrument here, but I want 4 on the floor, so there's going to be 4 E notes on the main beats. Okay, now we need to set the envelope so that it compresses off the kick drum. Well, there's the waveform, the duty cycle. I'm bringing down where it starts. There we go. Oosh, oosh. So it's pumping with the kick drum. That's a very important element in electronic music, to have the instruments interact like that. Alright, so I'm gonna play with a whole bunch of different settings here to try to get 2 voices playing the same thing but doing slightly different things, so that there's weird comb filtering and strangeness that you can get out of this processor on the Game Boy that you really can't get in the box, you know, in GarageBand or whatever. This is, the processor has 4 channels. I'm using 2 of them and playing the same thing on both. And because of the way the processor works, the waveforms aren't lined up exactly right. They're just a tiny bit off. So when they come up together, it creates some weird interactions between the 2 sounds. It's very, very difficult to do on a computer. Whereas with this, I can just, there we go. Hear how much fatter that is. I decided not to keep the rise, because we're going to do that in the software later. Something similar to it anyway. So So a little bit more just to take out the rise. Dialing in the instrument some more. And of course we've synced the Game Boy up to the computer while we're working. I'm playing the Game Boy live and the drum loop is going off with GarageBand in the background. Yeah, it's pretty close to what I want. So now that I'm pretty satisfied with this, we can go into GarageBand and actually record the output of the Game Boy directly. I don't want to do it in a loop here because I need to resync the timing. So I'm going to stop that, turn off those other tracks so they're not running, and record it onto this new track here. And I can arbitrarily record it anywhere, it doesn't matter, because we're going to move it anyway. One good trick to know with GarageBand to get things lined up nicely when you record something like this that you already know is in time, you can turn off the snapping and then just move it to your cursor and snip it, turn snapping back on, and then set it to a snap point. And then you can trim the other side of it and you're good. So now this loop is in time and lined up with everything else. Very, very easy. Bass drum. Still got a lot of work to do on this. Bass line to bass drum interaction, but it's there. For now I need to do the guitar though. Sort of a quick demo song, so I'm not doing anything fancy here. That's my metal-bodied acoustic resonator guitar through a small diaphragm condenser microphone. There we go. First take. Okay, so I brought it into GarageBand here. And this is just how I played it. And it needs to be tweaked and dialed and whatnot. So I baked it out, brought it back in, and now I need some synthesizer that complements it and plays the same notes. So I'm just going to quickly go through here and find all the spots where the, in the progression where the notes change, and get the root note and bring it onto this sort of weird FM8 synth. We're going to use this for some little strange color in the background in a couple of places. It's not going to be out in front, it's going to be more in the background, just to fill it out. Okay, so now I've got two copies of it, and I've got slightly different effects on the two different copies of the synth, and they're running out of time with one another. One is pushed back measure, so they're bouncing back and forth. One is up an octave from the other. A lot of echo and stuff like that, just to turn it into ambient background stuff. On the bottom one, I actually added a Leslie. You can see the top and bottom rotor spinning here. It's actually throwing it around in the stereo image, just to fill everything out and give it a little bit more ambience and depth. So now that's pretty much good enough for starting it, so I burned that out. I'm bringing the guitar recording back in another copy of it, and I sliced it. I cut it up into pieces that line up with the measure marks. And we're gonna go through and pull out all of the ones that are right at the chord changes in the progression. And we'll be able to use those leading chords to create the break for the song. So we've got this progression that plays, and then we've got a progression that's half as long. Then instead of recording it, for sake of speed, I'm just going to take the previous recording of the guitar that's playing the same chords in a different order and just rearrange them. Shortcut. Now, a lot of this is running at 8x speed as we go through here. That's because I'm pretty sure you guys didn't want to sit through the 4-day long video of how long it really took to do all this. So we've got our, there's E, a B chord and an A chord, I think. I'm just taking them and pulling them down and rearranging them in a new pattern. If I remember correctly here, there was one that I wanted to, there's a whole bunch of different E's, and I tried to use different E's from the original in different places. Yeah, because there's 2 in a row there from the same, so I'm going to remove this one and put the one from the very end. There we go. I left some space there in between them, and we're actually going to fill that up by taking a copy of these and creating a new line and putting them on the other line, and then adding echo to one side and filtering to the other side to really fill it out and make it a little crazy. So on the quote-unquote echoes, we're going to filter the heck out of them so that they definitely have a slap back from the distance sort of feel. And on the main one, we're going to add echo so that it blends over the top of the echo going on in the background, which totally hides the fact that there's 2 of them going on. Finding the right echo point is always, you gotta just try a lot of things and use your ears and listen for that groove that you've established elsewhere in the song. And in our case, there's definitely a back and forth swinging aspect to it, and I've got to replicate that here. Otherwise, we're going to have a really hard time pulling this break section in with our main part of the song. Here's what she sounds like with the drum loop. This isn't the drum loop for this section, but it'll allow us to match the groove. So I baked it out and brought it back in and affected it a bit more. Now we're going to bring that out, baked out with that higher level volume and all that sort of thing. Okay, now we need the actual drum section for that. And I've totally changed all of the effects and EQ roll-off points and all that for our voltage kit that we made earlier in battery, because I want the break to sound very different. A lot more high frequency and a bigger space. You can hear that tom drum just echoes like it's being played in a gym or something. And I keep bringing up the lo-fi D-line that we made earlier just to make sure that we're still matching the same groove. It's very easy to get lost. That drum fill is going to be, that fourth little section there, the drum fill, is going to be sort of one of the characters that defines this particular song. Listen. It's almost a marching band sound, which is really fun. I like that. Not something I've really used before, but sometimes these things reveal themselves as you're working. So I baked that out and brought it back in. That'll allow us to remove the voltage kits and all that from the track list when we go to do our arrangement. Save us a lot of RAM. So this is our break, sort of all brought together. A lot going on there, but it sounds good. Alright, now I need to do an intro, so I took the Game Boy stuff and I'm bringing it in, fading it up, and we're going to do some cutouts and echo back in. It stops and the echo comes in, stops, the echo comes in. And we're going to change up the pattern here a little bit. And then the track underneath is actually pitch shifted up. That right there. It's the same thing, just shifted up 12 semitones. Yeah, with the pitch pedal and guitar rig. Now this is designed to go with that kick drum. So it's going to be pretty epic when this comes in. So that's my intro piece. And we're going to bake out the intro and bring it back in as just a track so that we can actually remove all those track volume controls and all that sort of stuff. Here it is with the stuff around it, drums and whatnot. So we've built an intro there that actually pulls us up into the heavier drum portion of the song. And that's good, because once we're up there we can fall. And that's always awesome. We're falling into the break. And you saw that main part fell into the break just fine because we were careful with our groove. Now I gotta get back out of the break. That's harder. So let's see what we got. So I'm working on it here. This isn't the final, but we're in the break. Still some EQ work needs to be done on the drum break. Really sharp. Yeah, it lifts us up. So we're halfway up out of the break. And I'm doing some weird drum stuff up in the top couple of tracks there. And this is the part that's not quite done right in there. And then we're back into the break. I want to transition a little bit more smoothly up. So it lifts us a little bit, but it drops. And then it's going to start lifting up, but this time it pays off because it goes back into the musical. Yeah. You can spend years of your life just trying to get these little drum patterns right. And there's that weird synth stuff that I said we were going to use as a background earlier. This is the spot we're using it. But we need to bring it somewhere. So here's what we're gonna do. We're down in that middle of the break. This lifts us up, brings us back into the musical zone, and then we go into the synthesizer part here. And we gotta get out of that and into an acoustic, quiet part. So this is what I came up with. right here. That thing is going to be big. Gently drops us down. And then up here we've got the little drums coming back in, so that we're not totally lost in acoustic zone. That's the lo-fi version, so it's just sort of nice in the background, and then we're going to come in a little bit more heavy, but I have to add it yet. Here we go. And we'll give this a listen all the way through now that it's done. Bake it out to an MP3 here. And here we go.
We post videos all the time, so don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at TYMKRS.